Welcome, folks, to Good Morning Cannabis. I have my friend here, Steve Scheier, just like Lord of the Rings, right, Steve?
That's right.
Okay, and he's an author of a book that you should go out and get right now, Power Up, Essential Tools for Committed Cannabis Leaders. But before we kind of learn more about Steve, the question I ask folks is, Steve, tell me the strangest, most interesting, or something that happened in your life that's weird, strange, and good. So go. So this is your moment
Okay.
to tell us your story.
Well, I had my book. Thank you, Todd, for putting it up there. Is about power. And one place, very good, Todd, that I asserted my power was many years ago. I worked at Apple from 1982 to 91. And at one point, I was being recruited by Steve Jobs to come in and be the product introduction manager of the original Macintosh. And Steve was trying to get many different people to do this job, but because he wasn't running Apple at the time, they were saying no to him. But he brought me in. I spoke to him. I just got finished doing a big project with him, and he said to me, "Steve, I'd like you to do this job, but you weren't my first choice." And I said to him without missing a beat, "Steve, that's true, but I'm the only one willing to do it."
There you go. Well,
So I wouldn't say that's
that's
the
fun.
craziest thing, but that was actually a good thing, and it connects to my point of view about power. So, Todd, it's wonderful to be on your show, and thanks for having me.
Well, I hopefully did Steve tell you what number you were? He didn't say you were like the
Oh,
hundred.
I was about number 7 or 8,
Okay, you
but
are at least 107. So
oh
it's
yeah, yeah. It was a good day. It was a good gig, and I also got a he paid for my honeymoon
awesome.
as a bonus for pulling off the Mac intro with short notice. So I
That's it.
can't. And then I stayed in the Mac group for another year after that, or 2 years after that.
So the honeymoon paid for by Steve Jobs. So tell me a
Oh,
little bit.
actually, one little
Oh
crazy
yeah.
thing is that Steve arranged for us to go to Grenada for our honeymoon. There was one small problem with that. We
What's that?
invaded Grenada in 1983 when I was supposed to be there.
Oh
So that
God.
could have been another crazy thing I said. We were supposed to go on a honeymoon and we couldn't. We had to reschedule because the Marines and Special Forces were actually invading Grenada. So,
Probably wouldn't be a good honeymoon.
no, I didn't think it'd be a good place to go.
No, probably not.
No.
So a little bit about yourself. Give us a little bit about your background and how you came to write this wonderful book and what you're doing with folks, and then we'll get right into some tips that you have for folks who are entering or actually in the industry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I got into the industry in 2018, quite by accident. I had um, uh, done a lot of work in the nonprofit space. I was in human resources. And in 2018, I got a call from a good friend of mine and said, "Steve, my son, who you know is in cannabis, he's having a difficult time with some of his partners. Can you step in and see if you can help them?" And so over the course of a year, we kind of fell into and kind of arranged a semi-amicable divorce. But they liked the work I did with them, which is all about clarifying who's making what decisions and who has power in certain circumstances and how they can be better leaders. And that just led to more referrals, and that's what brought me today. So I've always been fascinated with power. I just gave a speech, in fact, as you know, Todd, to the Cleveland School of Cannabis commencement
Sure.
exercises about power and how people can use power for good. And that's the focus of my practice, which is empowering people, leaders in cannabis companies, to be more powerful. And people are often very afraid of power. And that's what I try to help them overcome.
So when you're talking about coaching leaders in cannabis, um, what do you see as the common theme of I'll say where people are weak in this concept of power? Like what's the theme that you
Well,
see?
they can often confuse, people have said to me, "Steve, why write the book about power? Aren't there enough power hungry people in the world?" And the answer is no, there aren't. One of the quotes I have in the book is by Rosabeth Moss Cantor, who is a professor at the Harvard Business School. And she says that, just very briefly, power is America's last dirty word. It's easier to talk about money and much easier to talk about sex than it is to talk about power. And it's something as Americans, there are certainly people who are power hungry and power crazy, but there are many more people who are being underpowered, who are not really asserting themselves in a productive and positive way. And so those are the people who I'm interested in helping. Um, I didn't really get into, Todd, what I do. I do some certainly some one-on-one coaching, but what I really do is create advisory boards for
Cool.
people in cannabis.
It's great.
That's really a big focus for me. And in the fall, after I get back from my honeymoon, I'm going to be launching a cannabis CEO council where
Cool.
people in cannabis CEOs or presidents can come to a meeting of their peers once a month and talk about their issues and challenges and create strategies for overcoming them. There'll be speakers, there'll be time to problem solve. And so that's really my big focus for 2023 is those advisory boards, which I've already launched, and this Cannabis CEO Council. But now to circle back to your question,
Sure.
I think people do two things. They are either underpowered or they are often very confused about power and how they inadvertently abuse it. Um, Power, we make it very clear in our book, is based on trust. If you're trusted, then you will be powerful. If you're not trusted, you will not be powerful. And every day, people either build on that trust or they erode that trust. It's sort of like you have a stock market ticker next to your head.
Hmm.
You may think that because you're the CEO of a company or the president of a company, that you get out of jail free passes, but no, that's not how it works. Every day, people see whether you're keeping your commitments or you're not. Sometimes people also get confused about thinking their company is their social structure.
Yeah.
Oh, will you,
Yeah.
can we hang out together? Oh, you look really attractive today. Maybe we can go out on a date. No,
That doesn't sound good.
no, let's not do that ever. People have to understand as leaders, they have a special responsibility, and their prime responsibility is to create an environment where people can succeed.
Right.
Everything else is utterly ephemeral,
Right.
right? And
Oh,
it is
yeah.
not working. You are not working on your behalf if you are violating basic precepts around trust.
Right.
You know, if you want to date, go on Tinder, go on Hinge. Don't start trolling the people on your team.
Oh, God. Good point, Steve. That's for sure. That's right on.
So, yeah, so trust is the essential part of it. Giving your voice Using your voice to communicate with your team so that they know what you want to accomplish. Now, you need to engage with people in a collaborative way. But one of the other major hurdles I see in cannabis people is that they don't want to sit people down and say, this is what we need to achieve. They don't want to hold people accountable, and they don't understand the majesty of their own voice.
Yeah. Great.
One of the other things we talk about in the book is the value of communication. And, there's a chapter called Use Your Words Carefully.
Hmm.
And I quote, this is really old timey, but I quote the soliloquy, the Henry V soliloquy in the Shakespeare play Henry V. Because Sh- Shakespeare, by Shakespeare's telling, Henry V has this incredible soliloquy before the Battle of Agincourt, where he says, those of you who shed your blood with me today will be my brothers, or my sisters for that matter. And people do not talk. They talk about things that are unimportant, but
Right.
it's important to get up in front of your group and tell them what's important. People ask about leadership. How do you define leadership? Leadership is about showing the way. That is the definition of leadership. You are showing the way forward.
Yeah. Excellent.
And that's what people want.
Yeah.
It's not that they want to, it's not that they're sheep. It's that if they're going to work in a company, they want to know that that company has a future and that there is a plan and a path. And if you can't show that plan and you don't have that path, then do something else or
Right.
find it.
Right. do you find, Steve, that the cannabis industry is different than the other industries that you've worked with in the past?
Not, well, to some extent, yes. I mean, a lot of the industry, I worked in the technology industry a long time. There are certain basic human fundamentals about power and fear of power that are similar. But this, this industry has a veneer of the unregulated market
Right.
exists. It existed and it still exists. There's people who are used to living in that unregulated market. And so those create challenges that people in technology or finance don't have, right?
Right.
And so,
Right.
yeah, there are different modalities out there. There was one person who I had a client a few years ago, and we quote him in the book. He said he was a partner. There were four other partners, and he didn't want to take direction from anyone.
Oh,
He
God.
said to me famously, and he didn't mean this in a racial, insensitive way. He's actually an interesting guy. He's got a PhD in chemistry. He's a smart guy, but he said to me, I don't want to be anyone's slave, which is, you know, not like great thing to say, but it's indicative of his mindset, which is that he doesn't want to take orders from anyone. And you need to being a leader is in part, getting back to the very first thing I said, is about trust.
Right.
If you can't be trusted, then people won't put their trust in you,
Right.
right? And then you get
Yeah.
situations like this, where this guy, just in this case, wanted to grow flower, in the greenhouse and didn't want to have to deal with anybody else. So there are some similarities, but because of the, how the industry started, there are some profound differences also.
So, Steve, I think you kind of alluded to it, but why the interest in cannabis? Why, how did you get into the cannabis industry? You said that in 2018 you had that
Right.
opportunity, but obviously something more than that kept you in the industry.
I was really struck by a couple things. Number one, it's a very creative industry. And there's many different people doing many different things. And it's a burgeoning industry. It's an exploding industry.
Yep.
Even though there are lots of hurdles with 280E and many other things, a lack of financing, state regulations, which
Yeah.
are,
Federally
burdensome,
legal, it's still federally
legal,
it's
financial. There,
legal. Yeah.
that's what makes it attractive. There are so many reasons why people should give up, and yet they don't,
Yeah.
right? So I'm attracted to it because people are really hardy in this area. They're very creative,
Mhm.
and also because a lot of them have a real commitment to the plant, and their belief about how the plant can help the world.
Yep.
One of the person who wrote the forward to my book is a woman named Tracy Ryan. Tracy is in Los Angeles. She's on the leadership team of a company called Encore Biotherapeutics. And her daughter struggles with cancer. And Tracy saw up close and personal how cannabis, when administered with more conventional therapies, could really help her daughter. And I was really honored that she agreed to write the forward to the book.
Oh, yeah. Tracy.
And so she's another
Yeah.
example of the passion I see in the space. Dylan Ball is one of my clients in Eastern Washington. He's in Yakima, Washington. He's a great producer of extremely low cost and extremely high quality cannabis. And he got into it. He got into cannabis because he was a very accomplished skier, and all of a sudden he developed a arthritic condition, which
Wow.
cannabis has really helped him. So, for those reasons, for the creativity, for the passion, um, that's what does it for me.
So, Steve, as we're wrapping up, how can people contact you? We're going to have in the show notes, some information, but is there a place where they can find you on the internet, email, tell everyone to
Absolutely,
go to
absolutely.
Amazon, buy this book? Because this
Thank
is actually
you,
a book.
thank you,
This is,
Todd.
I think that actually you even wrote in this book for me, which, see, Todd,
I
I
I
got you.
live in power.
I
Exactly.
love it. But
Yeah.
how can people find you?
They can find me certainly on LinkedIn. It's Steve Scheier, Scheier. They can email me at steve@stevescheier.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook under Steve Scheier. And Todd, it was really a pleasure being on your show. I want to thank you. I know I had to
Yes.
reschedule several times, and you were
It's
quite
worth
a
it.
gentleman
It was
about.
worth it. It was worth it. The wait was worth it. And we're going to have you back after, in I think maybe the second quarter of 2023 when you've launched a CEO, the
The
CEO,
Cannabis Council, yeah.
because I want to hear more about that. So this isn't the first and last time. This is the first of many conversations. But thank you so much for being part of the show. And with that, I'm going to wish you a great day, and we'll talk soon.
All
And
right.
have
Take
fun on your
care.
honeymoon.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Take care.